Okay, welcome. Welcome to all the viewers, and especially for my panel members. First of all, welcome to this a session about the moratorium to Green Deal and what to expect in the age of sustainability. We prepared three major topics which are related to the current status of the moratorium, and maybe all participants of last year remember that it was a big topic on this convention. So let's see where we are at the moment. The second and third topic are related to the public awareness and to sustainability, which is related also to the general topic. Let's go around the table that the guest can introduce himself. So, Natasha.
Yes, thank you, Dude. My name is Natasha Gierats. I am a partner at Evershed Sutherland, and I have a specialty in planning, zoning, environmental aspects, and a focus on data centers and renewable energy. And I'm based in Amsterdam.
Thank you, Arno.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Arno Uiterweert. I'm the Managing Director of Unica Data Centers as a design, build, maintain, and operate contractor for data centers in the Netherlands and Germany. I bring to the table today my experience in developing and constructing non-residential projects, but also I will make a small sidestep to wind farm development and construction, but more on that later. Based in Amsterdam.
Thank you. Richard?
Hello, thank you, Dude. My name is Richard Kaak. I'm one of the co-founders of Zentris. We are active in Europe in the data center industry now for 12 years. And Zentris is around in the playing field for design, development, and also operations of data centers. And we have also specialists in real estate development, facility management, permitting, design, but also customer implementation services, including racking, stacking.
Thank you, and thanks for joining. Quick introduction of myself, if you allow me. I'm a consultant partner at DGMR, and we support the data centers in development, in zoning, and permitting aspects. So with that, I think we cover the whole environment of developing data centers, being legal, initiative, and also the construction aspects. I would like to introduce or to ask the participant if there is any question, please ask them in the chat so we can take them in this discussion as well. So be free to add the questions. First of all, looking back, Natasha, where are we at this moment with the moratorium?
Yes, thank you, Dude. That's a really good question. We've seen a lot of developments since last year. What has happened is that, as you know, the moratoria were issued in the municipalities of Haarlemmermeer and municipality of Amsterdam, both part of the MRA region. And those were the only municipalities that issued the moratorium. And the status as of today is that both municipalities have established the new data center policy or a data center policy has been put in place. Haarlemmermeer was first and Amsterdam followed at the end of last year in December. What we've seen is that in Haarlemmermeer, also the zoning plan was put up for public inspection and has been established, although it is not irrevocable yet. And for Amsterdam, at the moment, the situation is a little bit less clear. So far, we have not been able to establish, and I was hoping to have someone from the municipality of Amsterdam within our audience who could maybe shine a little bit more light on the near future and what's going to be done with regard to the zoning. So it's one thing to have a new data center policy, but in the end, you also have to put it in a new zoning plan. And we have not seen that yet for Amsterdam. So that's in a nutshell the status where we are now.
And if you look at the both policies or maybe the drafts which are circulating, what are outstanding topics? We expect sustainability, but are there any special topics?
Yes, they are, and it's maybe good to say that both the policies are quite similar and have a huge focus on energy requirements, as we would expect. Both for Amsterdam and for Haarlemmermeer, new data center development is only allowed in designated areas. In Haarlemmermeer, it regards 4 business areas. And in Amsterdam, Amsterdam has also designated 4 business areas. So outside of these business areas, new data center development is simply not possible. Another aspect is that there is a maximum with regard of the megavolt ampere per year as growth is concerned. One of an important aspect is also that if you want, that's for Haarlemmermeer, it will be mandatory to build your own 150 kV substation on your own premises if you go above 80 megavolt ampere. In addition, there are requirements with regard to reuse of waste heat, circular construction, spatial quality of the data center, and the new developers and operators should make be aware of the fact that the data center should fit in to the landscape as much as possible. So those are the most important aspects, I think.
And Richard, have you seen any impact of this into your business?
Well, I think we already saw some impact regarding new build-outs, and we all know that a build-out is not taking place in 6 months or something, but that starts way earlier. So I think we will see some visibility in the next few years, and also from new parties that are coming to Europe and that are not moving to Amsterdam, even though maybe in the future the MRA region may have solved all the issues. And it may still be the issue that there's still the rumor in the market that the moratorium is ongoing, and that it may be very difficult and also expensive, like Natasha already said, that it sounds like it's getting more expensive to build a data center if it should fit the landscaping, if it should suit a heat system. Then it makes it more difficult to develop a data center in Amsterdam. It's not just at the warehouse with generators and UPS systems. So I think we will see that for the future. If I look at current customers, then we also see already a little bit delay in expansion, because a lot of the current customers are also looking for future expansion. They might come with 2 megawatts right now, but the possibility to grow to numerous megawatts in the future. And if there's a hold on the data center capacity, then it might be better to move to other regions. So I think we will see some issues on that service.
And then with other region, you mean within the Netherlands or also abroad?
Within the Netherlands, it's I think it's more Frankfurt, Paris, and even Dublin, Ireland, and where they will move to.
And Arno, being an constructor is maybe too small to say, but being involved in that part of the business, what is the impact you've seen last year?
I think what we see over the last year, and this was I also mentioned during my short introduction, is the similarity between the development of big scale wind farms and solar plants, and this something we call NIMBY, not in my backyard effect. And I think as an industry, knowing that locations become more scarce or further away from Amsterdam, which is still looking at internationally, the Netherlands basically can fit in big scale London. So let's be realistic on that. But you see that the scarcer the locations become, and the quest for the technical suitable locations, just as Natasha just mentioned, close to fiber connection, close to power grid connection, is also making a challenge towards obtaining the right permits within the spatial zoning plans and the construction permits. So what we've seen there is there's basically the involvement of the government. I would say even that far as pointing out where not and where to be built new data centers. In my opinion, we should avoid that as much as possible by, let's say, embracing, for instance, the statement on the climate neutral data center pact today mentioned, embrace as a data center developer and constructor, designer, everyone involved basically in our industry, to adopt the data center as good as possible in its direct surroundings, whether it is the use of heat waste, whether it's the use of green facades, roofing, landscaping, instead of, let's say, choosing to fight and find, let's say, the openings instead of embracing this philosophy. I think we better embrace it and work very closely in the development phase with the direct surroundings of the data center, let's say, inhabitants. This is basically when we take a look at, for instance, another industry in the, let's say, wind farm and solar farm development. This has been done, let's say, over the last 2 decades, looking for openings in obtaining permits, to a shift towards embracing the environment, allowing people to raise their word in the design, in the construction, in participation, even in its sustainability options. For instance, renting out solar panels on roofs. This is just one of the examples. We should embrace that to avoid that we ultimately end up with government-appointed locations where there is going to be a race in the square meter prices or even obtaining those permits. But this is what I've seen over the last year. And to be honest, I would say all the Dutch local governments, provinces, municipalities are setting up their renewable energy strategy, regionale energiestrategie in Dutch, allow me, RES. And as a data center, I think there's openings to use a data center such as a sustainability and energy hub instead of being a ugly, high consuming, polluting, excuse my words, facility. So I would say I see openings, and let's embrace it instead of looking for openings in the small openings in let's say laws. So that's my opinion, Dude.
Okay, and listening to that, I was wondering, and we come back to the sustainability aspect later, also on the public awareness of data centers. If I look myself towards the policy which are there for the 2 municipalities, there is also a direction on hyperscale versus other scale data centers. So, Richard, do you see if there is a shift in the Netherlands that for maybe a specific part of data centers are looking for other locations than Amsterdam area?
Yeah, I think as many people might know, we were already starting with that in 2006 with the development of the Eemshaven facility, where then before the hyperscale era, a large party build a data center, and that kind of areas will be come all over Europe more and more favorite for those parties, because there's enough power available, and fiber it will come to those locations once they are located there, and so they are the fire starters for getting fiber to that new kind of hubs. And the land is available over there, and there's no discussion if they can build a data center, such as you in Amsterdam. You might be competing with somebody else that would like to build an industrial plant over there, or more like an office building. So Middenmeer, Eemshaven, Zeewolde has become a new location over the last year, according to the rumors. those kind of locations where tenant has presence and where it is possible to acquire large amounts of energy and large amounts of land for the future, those might be really interesting for hyperscalers, but also for the larger retail parties that are also wanting to build campuses. Like I said, to build their future strategies on more campus-like locations.
And this also sounds like that part of, in this case, it's 2 municipalities, and maybe Natasha, you can answer maybe the direction of the question is that should it more be a national program looking at data centers because the importance of the Netherlands, or should it be more local aspect such as now given by Amsterdam and Haarlemmermeer?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's also a question that the former minister Wiebes was asked several times on Dutch television in a couple of programs. I think what we see, if you look at the public resistance with regard to establishment of data centers, that has also been where you might expect that within a city because of reasons that Richard was referring to, because you cannot use the land for other purposes when it's given to a data center. But in the outskirts of the Netherlands, where there is quite some space, it's especially in those areas where citizens and farmer organizations are objecting larger data center developments for several reasons. So in the end, I think it's also needs to be part of a nationwide discussion. You cannot leave this to municipalities alone, because if it's the municipality who has the power, in some cases, or the authority, in some cases it's the province, also part of a current discussion as we've seen. But I think that the national government should also give more input in this, more than that's been done right now, because several of the problems, just to highlight one aspect, if you demand in your municipal policy that the energy has to be green, but at the same for data centers, but at the same time, solar parks are unable to be built because they cannot put their power into the grid because of lack of transport capacity. Yeah, where do you get the green energy from? So we all want the same thing: municipalities, provinces, and the national government, but it should be a joint effort. And as far as we see it, is that it's also what Arno was pointing out earlier. It should be a joint effort, and it's until now it has been seen as parties standing across each other on opposite sides, where it should really, if the data center branch wants the same thing as the municipalities and the other governments want. So why not join forces and see what's possible?
Arno, you have something to add?
Yeah, I slightly tend to disagree with you, Natasha, to bring a little, let's say, resistance toward what you're pointing out. I tend to say to not have like nationwide policies, because what we've seen in the wind industry is that there's a concession type of system taking place where bidders for locations, for concessions, enter into a long, let's say, tendering procedure to obtain the rights for construction on those premises. First of all, I think that concession type of, let's say, structure should not be very attracting towards the data center industry. Maybe for the hyperscalers, but definitely not for, let's say, co-location retail parties. So I tend to say that within the local policies, municipality level, when developing such data centers, to open up, be very transparent, and to find solutions, exactly what you were saying, to maybe somehow connect those solar farms, or to fit in these data centers with the next indoor pools, or open water for cooling, and let's allow new business models, for instance, the use of waste heat, because also the residential construction market in Holland has a very high demand for green energy, or becoming greener, thus connecting those data centers with new built, let's say, living areas around cities. Let's open up and let's join forces instead of asking the government to regulate, because in my opinion, it will take a long time. We will end up with big discussions and ultimately a delay, or maybe even becoming less attractive as a country for, let's say, the data center industry. So that's maybe a little bit different to what you were saying, Natasha, but allow me.
Of course, it's a panel discussion. So Richard, you have something to add?
To add to that, I'm in the middle of both of you. Because what I see is, if you look at how other countries look at, and also our customers to what is happening in Amsterdam right now, they cannot understand this. But I'm also afraid what Arno said, if we leave this to the government and they will make a plan, then we will have the same discussion as in real estate with the Phoenix developments, and where the government said you should develop a residential area over there, there, and there. And that was just in places where nobody wanted to live. And so that will happen with data centers too. Then we will be pointed to areas in the Netherlands where nobody would like to have a data center because it doesn't fit in their schedule, for example. So if you look to US customers, for example, if I have to explain them that we have a zoning plan in place and that still the city can say, hey, we will be not allowing you to build a data center, even though the zoning plan is there already, then they cannot understand that, because they say it's your property. Why can you not build a data center on there? And so I think there should be, from a government, a national government perspective, the government should say, hey, the limits are there to certain cities to not be disclosing data centers or excluding data centers from a zoning plan, because we are now getting to a moment that we are seen as a different sort of industry. We had several zoning levels in industry levels, 1 to 4, 1 to 5, and we are now being seen as something different as a data center company in Amsterdam and the Haarlemmermeer. So I think that's a little bit in the middle of both of you.
Yeah. I want also, so Arno, I see you want to add something. One moment, please. There is one question with regard to the green energy. I want to come back later on, but also would like to shift to the public awareness. We're already mentioning it a bit. So maybe, Arno, you can add, after you add to the last topic, you can add with the public awareness, because one of the topics is also by allowing data centers to develop. They're seen as an big energy consumer. If you look at the newspapers, if you look at the television programs, but should it not be that they also enable the growth of a green network in the Netherlands, because of that they're using more energy, so that will help the energy network to take more green energy into their system? And a question from Hendrik Rood is, you get green energy with buying green energy certificates. Is that correct, or is that different? We're back. There was a technical failure somewhere in the system, but let's go back to the question, Arno. And there's Natasha as well. Arno, what the question was, so partly is how does it work with getting green energy? And the main question was related to
public awareness.
Yeah, public awareness, and the development of data center can also be adding something to the network.
Yeah. Okay. Before answering that question, because we were discussing obtaining permits, can you be so kind towards our audience after the question to tell something about the strange thing we call nitrogen in Holland, because this may affect Stikstof, this may affect, and maybe even quite hard to understand for our international participants what's happening here in Holland. And this has, in my opinion, a direct connection to the sustainability during construction phase and during operation phase of the data centers. But coming back to your question on green energy, indeed, there's basically 3 ways to obtain green energy. First of all, make it yourself, which is very hard for a data center to cover its own, to produce its own energy on the premises. The second is to buy green energy. That means you obtain green energy from, I understand, company participants from, for instance, Vattenfall are also in the room, but let's say from the big power retailers, you can buy green energy, but you can also indeed buy, let's say, gray energy, and then obtain on a different market the green energy certificates, certificaten garantie van oorsprong, which is the Dutch word, but I think the most common way is to buy green energy from the big retailers. That means, let's say, green produced energy, which is then being transferred a little bit virtual by the power grids towards the data centers. So that's the most common way, in my opinion. Does it answer the question, Ruben?
Yeah, so that's the becoming of getting energy, but also by if you look at public awareness, and I think we all have seen the different stories in newspapers, the information level is very different of understanding what a data center is. So, Richard, how would you explain, if you explain your business to a surrounding, how do you explain what you add to the system or maybe to the environment?
Yeah, I think we had some good things that the DDA contributed on this subject, because a lot of people did not understand what a data center was and why it was beneficial for them too. Nowadays, earlier, let me explain that first. Earlier, during tours through data centers, and we normally asked to the customers that already most of the time were working in the IT environment, do you already use a data center? And then most of the time, 90% of the audience said no. And so that already explained a lot of it. And then we explained how many people of you have a Facebook account? Do you have a driver license? Do you have subsidies or any loans at the government for your college time? And then they said, yes, I have that all. And we explained to them that they are all a customer in data centers. If you look at that today, I think for part of it, it's still an issue. I think the DDA already did a great job on that, explaining why we need data centers. And there's still, we as a nation cannot exist without exporting goods. And over the last year, we've seen that when we export data, then everybody's saying, hey, why should that be in our country? Well, for the same reason that we have Schiphol Airport, bad example at this moment, I would say, but also the Port of Rotterdam. We are doing that because we are exporting goods, and nowadays the new goods of the digital revolution is data. So that's the way we explain it right now. And still, in my previous example during tours, I think that's a really good question to ask to an audience. Do you use a data center yourself? And I think 90% will still say, no, I'm not using it. So maybe I was joking one time, I think with Stijn, we should have a commercial on the radio saying, you remember that commercial in the Netherlands saying, chicken, that's the best piece of meat you could have. Kip, het meest veelzijdige stukje vlees. And maybe we should have that for data centers. So you are all a customer. We have 17 million customers in data centers. Could be minor, could be major, but we are all a customer in data centers, I would say.
And oh, sorry, Arno.
Yeah, to come back to the public awareness, as you were saying, because I think Richard is very right on, let's say, the campaign on behalf of the Dutch Data Center Association. But next to that, there's also ways to let the direct surroundings participate in the development of data centers. And now I'm becoming a little bit soft, allow me. what we've seen in the construction of solar parks and wind farms is that people can obtain, for instance, a stake in such a development. So they financially can profit from a project, but also we created parks, we created educational facilities next or within those projects. And we asked, for instance, children even to make drawings of when you make a new project in their surroundings, how they would wish to look like. And you connect with that some small prizes and stuff. So you get a much better participation level during the development phase, and thus also opening up us as an industry, because I think as an industry we are relatively close. We are not open on what we're doing. Nevertheless, we cannot be open on the data, which is very clear, but we should be more open towards the public, what's actually happening there, creating a better, let's say, support base towards basically our industry and new developments.
Okay, thank you.
Duda, maybe
Yeah.
can I make an additional
Yeah,
comment to
sure.
also what Arno and Richard both said is like data centers being perceived as other industries. Well, in fact, they shouldn't, if you look at what's happening inside those boxes, as they've been called in the beginning unpolitely. And one of the questions that we see still coming from municipalities is, yes, but how many jobs is this particular data center giving? What's the employment? And the moment 100 people would be working into a data center, a municipality would be more willing to cooperate than at the moment that there would only be 5 people on a daily basis within the data center. So there was, and sometimes it still is, a little confusion of what the data center exactly does and is.
And I think to add there is that what is fair, and I think also for the data center developers to point out if they're developing in a certain area, also to point out that I call it the data center ecology, is also bringing additional partners to the location because of the support, because of safety. So security personnel can also be third party related. So it's a bigger economy coming to a certain location than only the box which is coming there, to state it that way. Arno, you asked me if we could explain also something about the nitrogen deposition discussion in the Netherlands, which is in part. So I think Natasha can join me there. But briefly, the main aspect is that in the Netherlands, due to a statement of the court, is that the way the Dutch government was dealing with nitrogen deposition in the past was not allowed and not in line with regulations of European standards. And based on that, they now back to, for every impact, which is a nature deposition, means a car driving, a generator running. So everything which is burning fuel or gas does have impact on the deposition in nature conservation areas. And you need to calculate that. And if it is not contribute and no impact there, that means 0.045 mole per acres per year as a calculated fact, then you're allowed to continue the development. And that's seen as the construction phase, but besides that also seen as the operational phase. That is the 2 phases you have to work against. Yeah. Be aware that still the aspect is not covered yet, and I think currently with elections in March this year, the ongoing discussions on other topics being taxes, but also that this topic will be also important next year for getting and obtaining permits.
Yeah, I think next to add to that, we obtained a nice contract, and we are now working out a nitrogen-free construction of multiple data centers within this contract. So. And this is the only way to construct and obtain the permit for those locations. So this should be taken into consideration when with land plot with the search for land plots also take into consideration. And for instance, I think your own company, Dude, is very capable of doing research in very premature phases, whether or not this nitrogen deposition is affecting the permitting procedures. And next to that, know that the industry is currently developing ways to construct nitrogen-free still the projects, but this should be taken into consideration at the earliest stage possible.
An interesting question which comes forward is that in the context of public awareness of data centers, why is there not more communication about this net positive impacts, being that currently all companies have their own data facility within their office, but by collecting them into bigger facilities that also have an impact on the operational level and maybe the sustainability level, or in this case is mentioned, or much greater amount of carbon footprint. What is the view? Should we do more? I think that's more or less the question which asks, why is there not more communication, or is it just seen by the parties involved and not seen by the public not dealing with this industry? Richard, can you say something?
Yeah, I think that was a question already a couple of years ago, how to get that IT guy to the point that he wants to move his IT equipment to data center. And nowadays, I think within a lot of companies, the discussion is if that then should be a data center owned by a collocation provider, or that it should be the cloud or a hybrid solution. I'm fully supporting that. I think that we can, as a sector, as an industry, can do a lot more on that with showing the benefits of doing it. It's still kind of invisible how many companies still have an in-house infrastructure. And we compared that a couple of years ago with, for example, Germany. I think in the Netherlands already 70% of the companies had their prior one data in a data center. And in Germany, it was only 20%. So based on that, we moved part of our company to Germany to say, hey, we can do more projects in Germany because of the market still available there. I don't know what at this moment the rate is. I think it will be researched by a company, but I don't know it right now.
And I think, and maybe that's also if you look at being a developer, or if you're looking for location to develop a data center, also Arno mentioned that, for example, nitrogen deposition is important. But do you think, Natasha, that also the stakeholders should be more important if you look to due diligence with regard to zoning plans, permitting aspects, that sort of things?
Yeah, I think in finding the right location, it all comes down to do really good research and liaise at the most earliest stage with all the stakeholders that are involved. And it's not only the municipality, province, the water board, if it comes to the water aspect, which is very important, the grid operator, and all the other stakeholders within the surrounding environment, who are able to cause a delay if you don't involve them from the start. It's all about communication, and I think there's a lot to gain if you act proactively and form a group with all the stakeholders right from the beginning, and not wait until the draft application is almost ready to be submitted. Yeah, that's a really important aspect.
I agree. We've got 5 minutes left, a bit left. So maybe it's good if everybody can use the final minutes to bring something forward you want to add at the final of this discussion before we have to end the discussion. So Arno, would you Did we miss something to add?
Yes. In my, let's say, in my glass ball, looking forward to the future, I would love to see that we embrace that a data center is not only a data center, but maybe can become an energy and sustainable hub within the urban development of the future, whereas all inhabitants directly in the surroundings of a data center see it as an energy hub, providing energy for their living. And oh, by the way, it also stores and processes data. That would be that's basically, let's say I have a dream, to use some words, but that would be very good if with such an approach we start developing new projects. So I'm really looking forward to anybody that's open for such an approach.
Okay, Richard?
Yeah, I fully agree with Arno on that. To add to that, if you look at data centers at the moment, we are being seen as large energy consumers, and indeed we should take care that we will be part of the Green Deal approach, where we will not be just a user, but also be used for storage. And I think data centers, compared to other industries, are one of the best companies to combine, for example, a battery plant and a data center, where we store energy when we have enough solar and wind, and the grid power is already stable, and where we use it in case of an emergency on the grid. And I think I'm really grateful that I already see, for example, in Belgium, that Google is doing already such a thing. And Microsoft is already looking at replacing its generators for different types of fuel, and hydrogen is one of them. And looking at those comparisons, for example, and I think, Arno, you have a lot more experience in this, but if you look at battery plants, I think for the next few years, that's the way to go for the next 10 or 20 years. And hydrogen, if you look at hydrogen, and massive hydrogen production will only take place in 2030, 40, 50. So looking at that, I think our vision should be that we take part in that energy transition by combining the storage and indeed the data center itself. So that's I agree with Arno's dream.
Okay, we've got 2 minutes left. So Natasha.
A very quick additional remark in line with what Arno and Richard said. It would be great if data centers could be seen as not part of the problem, but part of the solution. And that may also trigger municipalities and provincial authorities who have climate ambitions to help the data centers in some ways a little bit more than they are doing now.
Great, thank you.
Maybe one final statement. Let's solve the grid issue instead of cause the grid issues.
Yeah, or being part of the solution at least. I think that's the minimum step, and maybe it's worth looking over your own business and being solve the issue. Yeah, I agree. Thank you very much for this session. I hope the audience, we have some questions seen, so thanks for the insight of what happened last year and what will be coming up on the coming year. So thank you very much, and see you in the business this year.
Bye-bye.